cats are a very interesting group in Planet Zoo. With every DLC, some people ask for more and more, while others pray that we stop getting them. I've gotta say, I'm kinda in the middle. I like most of the new cats we get, but it does feel like we have a lot. 15 exactly. Anyway, in this video, I will be ranking every cat in the game. We did this for the birds about 3 weeks ago, and a lot of people seem to enjoy it, and actually it is in fact the #1 most viewed video on the channel, so thank you for that. So I figured why not do it again with another large popular group, even larger than the birds, cats. Now, just like I stated in the last video, the bird video, my criteria for ranking is the exact same. Main factors that I look for are the design and quality of the model, how much the animal costs, base game or DLC, and if it's DLC, is the rest of the DLC good? And finally, how useful it is. Once again, this is my list, so if you don't agree with any of my rankings, just remember this is just my opinion, especially because my #1 pick on this list is going to be a bit controversial, and probably not what a lot of people do have as their #1. But anyway, with that stuff out of the way, let's get into the ranking. Alright, West African Lion. Now, right away, you might think I'm contradicting my own rules because yes, it's from the base game, and yes, the lion should be useful as it's a lion after all. However, this is a rare case of one factor weighing the entire animal down for me, and that factor is the model, because my god is this thing ugly. The lion, the male one specifically, is by far one of the worst, cartoonish, and weird looking animals we have in the game. The females and cubs aren't that bad, but the look of the cartoonish male lion's face and model just hurts my eyes so much. It makes me not want to build for it in general, which does influence its usability, of course. True, it's from the base game, so you don't have to pay extra for it, but you really shouldn't have to because it looks like an abomination. Overall, it's a fine animal, good if you really want to have a lion in your zoo, because it is a lion, but the model significantly weighs it down for me personally. A more recent addition, the ocelot was added in the most recent pack, the America's Animal Pack. This is one of the better looking cats of the group in my opinion. It has good textures and beautiful details like the eyes, so why is it this low? Well, while its model is pretty impressive, it doesn't do that well considering the other factors, usability and worth. With usability, we already have the jaguar for South America, so it doesn't really fill a missing niche. You could argue that we get a smaller cat for South America, which is true, but after building for it myself, I really can't say that I felt anything new or different than I would building for the jaguar, which debates if in a regular zoo you would choose to build for it over the jaguar. Personally, for me, I would not. With worth, it's from the Americas pack, so you do have to pay extra for it, of course, as it's a DLC, and even though I do enjoy a fair chunk of the animals from that pack, I can't say that I would recommend that pack as one to get right away. It doesn't have a lot of super necessary zoo animals, and the highlight, in my opinion, is the Saki, which it's up to you if it's worth paying $10 for. Overall, the ocelot looks really good visually, but it just doesn't really do anything for me on both a value level and usability level. Alright, Sandcat. I know I'm probably going to get a lot of controversy with this one as well. Arriving from the Arid Animal Pack in 2023, the Sandcat is a pretty interesting feline that I may get some disagreement with for placing it this low at 13. However, to me the Sandcat really isn't that interesting of a cat to build for. When the Arid Pack came out, a lot of people liked its addition because it was a smaller cat for Africa and they look super cute. Yeah, neither of these arguments really I really agreed with honestly, personally. We already had the caracal as a small cat for Africa, and if I had to choose between the two to build for, I would almost every time probably choose the caracal, just because it's a more interesting cat to me to build for, and just in general. In terms of its model design, it's good. It's part of that golden era we talked about last time with Planet Zoo DLCs with the 2023 packs, making really good quality, but I would say it's a bit lackluster compared to other animals in the Arid pack itself. You look at all the ungulates and stuff, or all like the camels, the gazelles in that pack, and the porcupine, it definitely is a bit lacking in quality in comparison to those animals. But it is still one of the better looking ones regardless. Speaking of the Arid pack, another factor that weighs it down heavily for me is the pack it comes from, the Arid pack. Obviously you have to pay extra for the Arid pack, and to be honest, this is probably one of the last packs I would recommend if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of packs. It has a couple standouts like the dromedary and porcupine, but it also has some that may not be as useful, like the addax or the Dama gazelle. So overall, I would say that the model of the Sandcat is good and its usability is okay. I wouldn't personally use it often, and I still haven't built for it, from myself. And the pack it comes from as a whole just doesn't feel worth it to me for that extra $10, putting it this low on the list at 13.
Bye, have a great time.
Alright, number 12, Bengal Tiger. It's hard for me to rank this one, honestly, because it's such an iconic animal. You need tigers in a zoo. But there are some things that weigh it down for me outside of how iconic it is. The Bengal Tiger is one of the 5 cats from the base game, so you don't have to pay extra for it. Now, Right off the bat, looking at these strengths, the Bengal tiger is definitely one of the more useful cats of the list just because it's a tiger and a very popular zoo animal. Another strength for the tiger would also be that you don't have to pay for it and it's already included in the base game. But that does come with consequences. Just like a lot of the base game animals, the tiger model is not that realistic compared to its real life counterpart. It's not as bad as something like the lion, but it still has a lot to be desired, especially with the fur textures and the face. Overall with the Bengal tiger, it's a good animal, especially for beginners, and as it's a popular animal for zoos in general, but its model significantly weighs it down for me a lot, very similarly to the problems I have with a lion. Alright, snow leopard, another cat from the base game, but the model of this one is, in my opinion, significantly better than the others like the tiger or lion. While it is still a bit too poofy for me, it does look a lot like a snow leopard more than the tiger or lion look like their real life counterparts. At least to me. Maybe that's subjective. Still, it's not the best model by far or compared to some of the other cats higher up on the list, but its model doesn't discourage me from using it, which is a big plus so far. Aside from that, it is a pretty common animal to have in zoos, and while I myself haven't used it as often as I should, I do think that this is one of those animals that you can build for multiple times in different zoos and not get tired of, or not get bored of. Mountain cats are also just pretty fun to build for in general, at least to me, which may be personal bias, but I think overall, I think the snow leopard is just an okay cat in this list. It doesn't have any major negatives, doesn't have any major positives, it's just kind of floating in this list. It has an average looking model, decent usability, and it's free, and it just sneaks its way into the base game along with more big name cats like the lion and tiger, which it actually outshines. Overall, the snow leopard is a fun cat to build for with no big cons, but there's just a few cats that are more impressive than it to me personally, and by a few, I mean 10. Alright, number 10, the Siberian tiger. We're really knocking out all the base game cats, aren't we here? We got like 4 out of 5 of them. The Siberian tiger is again another cat from the base game, just like the snow leopard, just like the lion, and just like the Bengal tiger. Again, you do not have to pay for it, or not to pay extra for it. You still have to pay $50 for the base game, or $60, or whatever. Just like I said for the snow leopard, I believe that the Siberian tiger does look a lot better for a base game model compared to ones like the lion and the tiger. It looks even better than the snow leopard in my opinion, and honestly it might be a better looking one design-wise than the last base game animal that we still have yet to cover in this list. I think you might be able to guess what that is. That animal is only higher up because I believe that it's more useful. But to get back to the Siberian tiger here, it is a pretty useful cat. I wouldn't say that it is the most useful. The Bengal tiger, if you're ignoring how either of them look, is probably what you would go with because I believe that it is a more common zoo animal. However, the Siberian tiger isn't completely useless. I just don't think about it that often when thinking or planning out Asia sections or mountain sections in my zoo. The main strengths it has going for it is that it's free, so you don't have to pay extra. It is a pretty good model when put up against the other base game cats, and it is a cool animal, it's a pretty round out animal to build for in general in my opinion. Overall, a well-rounded animal with not a lot of cons, similar to the snow leopard ranking. Alright, number 9, the Palace cat. This is one that I wanted for so long, and I bet you're wondering why I only put it at 9. Let's get into that. Okay, so now we're moving into the more exciting felines. Again, like I said, starting the top 9 with a recent addition, the Palace cat. The Palace cat is from the Zookeeper's Animal Pack, which means you do have to pay extra for it. It was released in fall of 2024, so that was actually the second most recent pack to come out. So it is an extra price tag, but is it worth the extra price tag? For me, I would honestly say yes. And I don't say that for a lot of packs that are really recent. Looking at the pack the Palace cat comes from, as a whole, you get some pretty useful animals, like the spectacled bear, the safaka, African tortoise, and not to mention the Hamadryas baboon. They're animals that are not super useful in a zoo, but they're very common filler animals, that they are actually pretty useful. And then you also get the Markhor and the Dik-Tik I forgot to mention as well, which are also pretty useful. So price-wise, I'd say it's worth it. Now let's look at design and usability. The design of the Palace cat is easily one of the better cats in general in the game. While some complain about the face maybe being too fat or being too fluffy, I didn't see these complaints stick around for long, and most would agree by now that there isn't anything extremely wrong with how the Palace cat looks. The model textures are way better than a lot of the early added cats, which makes the Palace cat a top player for looks. Usability is where it mainly gets dragged down for me and why it's only at 9, as it's one that isn't too common in zoos, and with competition from the lynx, Siberian tiger, and snow leopard for mountain cats, and also the cougar, it's not one I can imagine people using over and over again in multiple zoos. Overall, the Palace cat's strengths definitely revolve around its beautiful model and the pack it comes from. From the Southeast Asia Animal Pack, actually the first animal pack, introduced number 8 on our list, the clouded leopard. A popular feline among zoos, especially in Asia sections, the clouded leopard is one of the more common species that a lot of people I feel would automatically consider it to be one that you would need right off the bat. But to me, it's fine without it. I don't think you need it like right away when you order the game or you get the game. So let's look at the specifics, the design. It is one of the better looking cats. The patterns and details on the model are pretty impressive. It's not one of the most recent packs released in 2021, so it's not one of the most recent cats, but it is still a lot better than any of the cats from the base game. I feel like I've said that so many times so far. I think the main thing that a lot of people get annoyed by with this cat specifically is the climbing animations. The cloud leopard for a while now has been named the moonwalking cat, as a lot of its climbing animations are messed up at times or at unrealistic ranges, as in it'll jump across the entire habitat with one jump. To me, this isn't a huge deal breaker, but I could see it as being one for someone who wants to use the cloud leopard more often in multiple parks. For the usability, it is, like I said, like one of the more common animals in zoos, so I could see this as one of the more common cats to build for, but at the same time, there are a few other options for Asian cats as well, like the snow leopard, palace cat, and Siberian tiger. But it depends on what kind of area you are going for. The DLC that the cloud leopard comes from as a whole is honestly pretty decent in my opinion. A lot of useful animals for Asian buildings or Asian sections, like the Malayan tapir, sun bear, babirusa, all animals that I do or at least try to use more often. I think the main things that bring it down in the list is just the broken climbing animations, and there are just more interesting cats coming up that I prefer to build for, that I honestly just think perform better in all three categories than the cloud leopard. Alright, number 7, we are now halfway into the upper half of the list with the Amur leopard from the Conservation Pack released in 2022. This was a fan favorite by many, and it makes sense then that when this one was revealed for the Conservation Pack, a lot of the community was very pleased because it's almost impossible to make an endangered pack without having the Amur leopard, because it is a very well-known animal for its endangered status. The Amur leopard was also, at the time, our first true regular leopard species. Of course, we had the snow and clouded leopards, but we didn't have that classic yellow, black spotted leopard. So that basically covers usability. Now, what about the design and worth? Well, the design is pretty good. It had its problems when it was first introduced in the Conservation Pack, but at some point, it's pretty clear that it has either been fixed, or the shots that it was shown in during the pack's release didn't do it justice and it looked decent the entire time. Either way, the model now looks better than it did before, and I've seen a lot less complaints about it recently. The Conservation Pack as a whole is a very good pack in my opinion. The other animals in the pack are very useful, especially the Przewalski's horse and Siamang, and the building pieces in this pack are as well very useful in a classic setting specifically. So why is this only at 7? Well, while this was for the first classic leopard we did get the African leopard later on, which I don't want to go too in detail about right now, but I do think that this is a case similar to the flamingos from last episode or from last video, where the newly added animal trumps the former in almost every way possible. But we'll get more into that in a bit. For now, let's move on to number 6 and we'll come back to that. The last base game cat on our list, and one of my personal favorites, the cheetah. The cheetah is definitely one of the better looking models of the base game and compared to ones like the lion and Bengal tiger. It's not perfect by any means, but it is still a strong contender as an animal in general in the game. It resembles a cheetah enough so that it actually looks like a cheetah, which doesn't sound like a compliment, but it is. Trust me. Now let's talk about the worth. It's free and included in the base game, so automatically that does praise it a bit more, as it does not come with another additional price tag that a DLC species would. Finally, the usability. This is where I believe the cheetah shines the most. The cheetah is a very unique animal. Yes, it's a cat, but it's unique because of its speed and its appearance that is very common in zoos and a lot of people in the community build for it. This separates it to me from other African cats like the lion because it's unique in how you build for it. It's almost like, even though the lion is a cat, like any other, it's still one that you see in almost every zoo because it's a lion. It makes a name for itself because it looks very iconic. That to me is the cheetah, but just with a better model. The cheetah is, again, very unique. Of course, it has its like well reputation for fastest land animal, but it also just has that unique build and unique look that makes it look very distinct and is a recognizable zoo species. Alright, let's move on. Into the top 5, we have the Eurasian lynx added in none other than the Europe pack in 2021. First off, the Europe pack in itself is really good. It has very useful animals that are really your starters to Europe since the base game has very few European animals. The pack also introduces a lot of extremely useful pieces that I use with almost every build, so it's safe to say that right off the bat, this pack is worth the extra price tag if you are interested in the lynx. Moving on to the lynx as specifically, it also has a pretty impressive model. It's not the most recent feline, but in this case that doesn't really matter. The lynx honestly in my opinion looks better than a lot of the cats we have in general, regardless of when we got them. Probably the best looking animal in the Europe pack and also one of the best cats in the game, all in all. design-wise. Finally, our last category to discuss is usability. And we kind of already covered this before. Like I said, the Europe pack gives you a lot of your starter animals for Europe, and the Lynx is no different, and it fits into that label. We don't have any other cats for Europe, and it still is one of my favorite animals to build for when building a European section, so I do think it holds value with usability. It's only at 5 and not any higher, just because I believe that there are better cats in terms of either looks, the packs they come from, or how usable they are. Alright, from the North America Animal Pack introduced in 2021 as well, the Cougar. It was kind of the underdog, or undercat, of this pack, with the frontrunners being the beaver and the moose taking the spotlight. However, the Cougar is still one of the best cats we have in the game, and it is the only North American cat in the game. I know ocelots have range in places like Texas and Arizona, but we'll not count that because you'll have probably more chances that you'll put them in a South America section over a North America section. But anyway, the Cougar's model, just like the Lynx, is not the best of the best. It wasn't the most recent addition. However, its model does look really good for what it is. The textures and details are on point, and it overall is quite satisfying to build for and entertain. The North America pack as a whole, in general, has some very useful additions alongside it, like the moose, beaver, alligator, sea lion, and Arctic fox, so I would definitely say it's worth the extra price tag. As for usability, the Cougar is again the main cat for North America, so for me it is a pretty useful species. I myself have built for it a few times, and I've seen a lot of nice builds over the last couple of years for the Cougars in North America sections. It might not be one that you absolutely need right away, but it is a nice filler animal for North America, or if you're making a cat house. In the end, a nice model, great representation, and a great pack that it comes with. On par with the Lynx for number 5, in my opinion. Coming down to the top 3. And we are starting off with the Jaguar, introduced in the South America pack all the way back in 2020. I really think this one should have been included in the base game, but it is what it is, and to be fair, the pack that it comes in is a decent pack to buy in itself. The pack is fine, it has okay building pieces with a lot of temple stuff if you're into that, and it comes with a couple other good species like the anteater and llama. The Jaguar itself is a really good animal that is mainly up here because of how useful it is. The Jaguar is probably the most common cat I see online for habitat builds, a lot more within the first year it was in the game, but even now the Jaguar remains to be a popular cat to build for, and I think the main reason for that is because it's the flagship animal for South America, which is why I thought it should be in the base game. It's also because for South America you have barely any animals in the base game, let alone South American cats. There's 2 you can choose from, either the Jaguar or the newly added Ocelot, but looking at the packs that each of them come from as a whole, I would recommend the America's Animal Pack honestly with the Ocelot, but between just the cats, I'd choose the Jaguar just because I enjoy building for a bit larger sized cats, and it's just a more common one to see in zoos, hence why it's my go-to for South America sections. The model of the Jaguar is iffy. It comes just 6 months after the base game, so the model still has some work needed, but it is still impressive and definitely not as bad as the lion or Bengal tiger. In the end, the Jaguar is a good cat with a good model, represents South America, and is from a decent pack with some useful animals. Alright, number 2, the Caracal. You might be wondering, we've had such famous names as we continue up the list: Cougar, Jaguar, Cheetah. Why is the Caracal at number 2? Well, first of all, I love this cat, and so I do have some bias, but also it does have a strong standing in all 3 categories that can excuse its placement this high. First of all, the Grasslands Animal Pack, the pack that it comes in, is my favorite pack. It has super useful animals including the armadillo, emu, wallaby, and Maine wolf that I use often, so the pack is definitely worth it in my eyes. As for the model itself of the Caracal, because this pack is a bit more recent coming from 2022, it does have a better looking model. In fact, it has one of the best models for at least African creatures. The ear tufts especially are pretty detailed with how they bounce and flop around every time the Caracal jumps and pounces. That also brings me to the fact that the animations for the Caracal are super fun to watch, especially the kittens play fighting or the adults powerful jumping. So that's 2 of the categories down. Now finally with the usability. I will say that the Caracal is not the most go-to animal in terms of the ones to build for. When thinking about African cats, your mind will probably immediately go towards bigger ones like lions, or African leopards, or cheetahs. However, I see the Caracal just as usable as those ones because while it may not be as common or well recognized in zoos, Caracals are really fun to build for in the game, and because they are the first small cat for Africa alongside the sand cat, which was from a pack that I don't strongly recommend, so really it could be the only small cat for Africa if you don't have the arid pack. Building for small cats is really fun, at least for me, because you get the joy of building netting cages or moated enclosures without having to make them so big for the larger cats. Overall, the Caracal has one of the better looking models, is one of the most useful for me at least, and it's for my personal favorite pack in the game. Seems hard to beat, but let's see who's number 1, because there is one to beat. Yes, I know this is a bit controversial, but I really do think that the African leopard is slept on as an animal in the game just because it was an anniversary edition animal, but that shouldn't really knock it down, and I do believe that it is a #1 cat in the entire game, and I'm going to explain why. Now first, I think a lot of the criticism for this cat I saw when it was first revealed was because we already had the Amur leopard from the conservation pack, but if you don't put them against each other and look at them as individuals, I would say that the African leopard is better in almost every way. It is a better looking and more detailed model, it's free, and in the base game unlike the Amur leopard, which you have to pay for extra, and it's a pretty popular feline in zoos. In fact, the African leopard is the #1 most common leopard in captivity. Not only this, but the African leopard, given its name, contributes to Africa, which while we do have lots of African cats, it adds to the variety and lets people build for a popular cat native to there, as opposed to cats that are maybe less known, like the caracal. The African leopard also completes Africa's Big Five, which while I don't really find this super important of an achievement because it relates to hunting, it does complete another achievement for the game, with us now having all those big ticket animals. When it was added, I think the perfect way to sum it up was that it wasn't an animal that is the most exciting to build for, but it was the one animal that was needed to make Africa and the game feel complete. The only possible downside of it that I can really think of is that it isn't the most fun to build for if you've already been used to the building for leopards like the snow or Amur. But since the African leopard is part of the base game, if you were new to the game, then it could be one of the first cats you build for. In conclusion, I really think the African leopard is an underrated cat in the game. It's useful, it is a beautiful model, and it is included in the base game. You don't have to pay extra for it. And there you go, that is my entire ranking of all 15 cats in Planet Zoo, from the abomination of the lion all the way to the amazing African leopard. Let me down below in a comment what your ranking of the cats would be. If you did enjoy this video, again, these ranking videos take a long time, so if you did enjoy, please hit the subscribe button, please hit the like button, and share it to your friends or anyone who you think might be interested in this if you really want to go out of your way. Let me know what group of animals you want me to rank next. I've been keeping my eye on reptiles for the next one, but I don't know if there's any after that I should really do. Maybe primates or something like that. Let me know down below what you want to see. I do want to keep going with ranking videos because these are personally fun for me in terms of actually ranking stuff. So that's pretty interesting to me. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you all in the next one. Bye guys. Have a great rest of your day.